First of all, I want to talk about the appreciation of performing arts. It certainly draws from a wide range of sources. It may include dance and drama. Basically, the main purpose of these 2 sessions is to guide the students to appreciate dance works. Dance works are actually all-inclusive. From so many types of dance works, I have selected some representative dance works from different periods, in chronological order. What I have selected here are artworks of some Taiwanese dance companies. Comparing to the so-called general types of dance in the traditional sense, such as ballet or modern dance, there may be a little different and innovative ideas in these works. Due to the time limit, I don't want students to spend the whole session watching these works. So I just show them some clips of the footage. Students started with the first film, the ballet, and then moved on to modern dance, postmodern dance, experimental works, and Aboriginal dance. In addition, I showed them the dance theater. Today I chose Home Temperature. Students watched the dance work twice, because it is more like a dance theater. Speaking of which, the focus of this session will be the so-called 5 elements from the Laban movement analysis, which I mentioned before. Laban's student Kurt Hughes mentioned that one feature of the dance theater is the expressive theatrical tension. And such tension is massive. It also puts strong emphasis on characterizations.
I think it should be the one related to family. It's called Home Temperature.
There's only one person, and he uses a microphone to make sound. Then he tells his own story.
Elder.
The Cloudgate Dance Theater, a work by the Cloudgate Dance Theater. I've always been impressed by the Cloudgate Dance Theater. I also like the way it integrates things from China and Taiwan.
The dancers started with talking, and it felt like that the audience had already entered the performance unconsciously to watch the performance. And at the same time, the contrast became very sharp. Also, the dancers' movements were full of tension. It actually changed my stereotyped way of thinking, which separated drama from dance. I realize now that these two could be put together and they could be mixed with each other naturally. For example, I remember there was a man sitting on a sofa. Then he constantly shifted his position left and right with exaggerated body language and the words he used to speak. There was just one person sitting there alone, constantly changing his position left and right, and was kind of losing his mind.
What are the elements of dance? Firstly, I'm speaking a little faster. Space. Someone mentioned space. Good, there's space. Body, time, space. Space has been mentioned already. Effort. Relationship. 5 things, remember? Next, I wanted to introduce the elements of dance to the students. As I mentioned in the second session, the 5 elements of dance, body, time, space, effort, and relationship from Laban. I led students to watch this 5-minute footage. And we talked about the characterization realized through dance movement, which is more abstract after all. As it uses many parts of the body to create an action that fits the character's personality. Then we can discover how these elements are used. And I hope that when students watch this film again, they should be able to see more different things than the first time.
The big girl in red. In the beginning, the character, a girl, basically is controlled by the boy. But I think their relationship is good. I don't think she has any resistance. Even her facial expressions shows no signs. And she is very relaxed in keeping pace with the boy.
The one in red, in a long red dress. A long red dress should be the same person as the one Hong Eun mentioned. What is your observation? The action is very strong, but it is basically loose. And the volume is very large. And she interacts with the man, the sofa, and the floor. Well, that's good. Now with more details. She is aware of the relationship between people and objects. Very good. But her observation is not quite the same with Hong Eun's. Hong Eun thinks she is very gentle, while Ping Jun feels that her movements are very heavy, with sense of weight. During the process of students sharing, we knew about what student observed. Then I would describe to them again the choreographer's original creative ideas. Furthermore, I would introduce the characters in the dance works they saw. For example, they saw the so-called woman in red, or a man, and they did a pas de deux, and even the setting and the arrangement of the whole picture in the theater. There is always a living room and a dining room in the house, or the most private space, your bedroom, even in the restroom. Scenes are set in all these places. In a space like this, what would you do? In the choreographer's work, Home Temperature, she also discussed about the most important issue in the family, violence. Then, in the design of the dance, as I mentioned, the relationship of the 5 elements in the Laban movement analysis, such as relationship between men and women, or women and children, or the interactions between father and mother. How did the choreographer generate these? What did she want to express? Those questions help students realize the deeper meaning the choreographer wants to express. Because I actually gave them a very simple task in the previous week, what did you see and hear intuitively? So they just wrote what they saw. What's on the film, what they saw, then to feel. Nowadays, most students would write better about the so-called abstract feelings. They might just feel that they were unhappy, or their moods might be all mixed like a mess. That would be their own feelings, and they would not really see the specific details that the choreographer or the playwright or the director try to arrange in their artworks. So I think this is a little bit difficult. However, this is probably the exact reason why we need to guide them. How to see the works. If there is a chance to invite the choreographer to talk to the students face-to-face, it'll be great. We can't say that the audience and the choreographer will always have the same understanding. That's impossible. So choreographers, I believe, have the same tolerance to let the audience articulate what they see and what they understand. Under such background, we stand in the middle, bringing the choreographer closer to the audience. Our audience now are the students. It's easier for them to say, "Oh, so that's what the choreographer thinks. But what I see is this. What's the difference here?" The difference can actually be digested. And then we will be able to recognize different points of view. Next, it's the students' turn to create in groups. In these 2 sessions, I chose Teacher Lai Cui Shang's Home Temperature because the issue discussed in it is closer to the students. Whether you are abroad or at home is always the most intimate place you grow up with. Therefore, students resonate easily with it, focus on the concept of home. I hope students to develop roles from a home, and then they can describe the characters of the roles. Next, they combine these roles into this home through a very short episode, then present it. Actually, I think spending only 2 sessions on this theme is a bit rushed. Because even though we have 2 continuous sessions, a 100-minute session for a class like this, I think it's a little bit too short. A lot of things will actually become very rough. However, I do have follow-up classes. So in the follow-up classes, I think it should be okay for me to take my time to help each group of students. For instance, in the video later, you will see that their presentations focus mostly on the lines. Something else I really want them to include: the actions of the characters are missing. So I hope that in the follow-up sessions, I can help them improve. Actually, in the worksheet I made for them, there was a task about characterization of the role's action. It was there, but because students usually can express more quickly with words, or maybe they are not familiar with using their bodies, so they are less capable of using their body movements to communicate in roles.
You tell me how bad your math test is. Tell me why. No way. You know I just suck at math. I already let you go to the cram school. I also gave you a new phone. Why can't you do better? You don't need to let me go to the cram school.
Hey, if you want to quarrel, go inside, okay?
Shut up. Come here. If you don't do better next time, you are going to get out and live on your own. Why? This is my home. No, this is everyone's home.
I think if I could be more detailed, let's take another group, for example. They all have their own personas. With the personas, the student should be able to give the role some action trait. For example, he is quiet. He may often walk around quietly. The inertia of the action of walking around can be arranged to show in the presentation. Then, every now and then, just to let everyone see that in his heart it is actually somewhat restless. So he needs to move around to get rid of his restlessness. On the other hand, the students can add what is called a catchphrase to continue the lines. As well as the presentation of actions. I don't think it is too difficult for students to speak. But these 3 groups actually lacked of physical performance. Very little. The second and the third groups were moving around because they had scene changes, so they had to move. They had the so-called walking. Yet even when they walked, it was just a simple movement of walking. Then, as to the second group, because they had a different physical performance compared to the other 2 groups, because they had a so-called story, when the sound was heard, the body made a natural bend in order to know what it was. There was a student who just gave a feedback. She played a little girl, so she moved her body at a lower level, using squats. Yes, but it didn't last to the end. The teacher would ask us to do some movements, a bit like what we usually do in an improvisation class. It's kind of playing a game, activities that let the body move, and also stimulate the brain. I was impressed by this kind of things, and felt special.
Because it was different, very different from the kinds of things presented on paper in other courses. At the same time, it will give each student opportunities to demonstrate their abilities in different areas. It was more lively than other courses. Compared to what we learned in school in the past, it was relatively innovative. The course let students do some things by themselves, in terms of script, action, or how to use their bodies. to express these thoughts through body language. In previous courses, we just see that knowledge, but here, we need to create some images from our minds to let the body express things which we usually can't express with words, or something we haven't noticed before. But actually, the image is released through our bodies, so it helps us to discover details that we don't usually pay attention to.
I think when the beginners are asked to appreciate artworks, they must feel scared and terrified. But I think we can start from looking at why that work is so moving. What makes people curious about it? In this way, because you are curious and moved, you can start to learn, to explore, to find out where it can be used to help you grow. Here, I think we can introduce it in 3 stages. For example, we need prior knowledge. We need to understand the relevant history of the work, style, skills, the creative team of artists and performers. We also need to have basic abilities, including observation, comprehension, analysis, discussion, and expression. This is very important when we are embarking on appreciating artworks. Next, what we need is good training. This training involves seeing more, thinking more, and talking more. Then we need to expand our horizons to strengthen our profession. Then our discourse will be precise.
When we face some existing works, these finished works, how do you see and appreciate them? It must be started from the perspective of your own interest and viewpoint. That means you have to be interested in this work. It has some artistic attractiveness which you find interesting. It's not necessarily just a fun thing. It might connect to some kind of childhood memories you have, or a memory of a friendship that was once very unforgettable. Such connectedness must be related to your life experience. It actually provides you with a world of art, because you found a key to enter such a world. And then, in there, you can accept it perceptually, or to refer to other people's or some predecessors' views, to analyze and appreciate such works. I think that's all right. But remember, in the end, when you have seen more and more works, I think you would gradually construct your own artistic view. It's a stage of personality growth. I think my suggestion and recommendation is that it should have classicality, artistry, and reflectiveness. These 3 major principles and directions are what I recommend. And, in addition, I would also suggest that some of the classics in Chinese and from around the world should not be neglected. Diversify your contacts as much as possible, because I think as a high school student, although in the process of character development, he's still in the middle, at the young adult stage. But the problem is, he is starting to have contact with some social involvements or concerns about public issues. Master a work first. Master the aesthetic and structural aspect of the work. For example, in terms of drama, it may contain the plot. You will see some characters, and there will be some events happening. There will be some scenarios when the events occur, etc. Master these elements. These elements will constitute the most basic structure of a dramatic work. Then you can go on and say, between these different elements, what are individual features that each element has? From these individual features, you will find that between this element and another element, what is the interrelationship? Do you understand it? Such understanding should be divided into different degrees and levels. We will always start from the surface level. something that's closer to our own life experience, to understand the work. So, in watching a work, don't think that you can master it all at once, profoundly to the core. It's a little too soon. Slowly after your practical experience is accumulated, you will come to a kind of understanding with analogy, beginning to connect to some of your life experiences. For example, you may read some notes that people wrote after they watched the play, or you can talk to your peers. You can share with each other, communicate with each other, find out about the different sides and angles of the work you see. I think through a communication like that, you will gradually develop the ability to express your feelings about a work, about its creativity, your feeling about its beauty, the scope of the beauty, you see its artistry, and even think about some of the publicness behind this work, or the involvement in some social issues. Then, from inside and outside, up and down, you are gradually developing your own, the so-called humanistic qualities. I think there is such a phased process.
The 6 pieces I would like to recommend are Swan Lake, a foreign work. This is a famous classical ballet. And the pioneer of modern dance in American Martha Graham's Appalachian Spring. And Café Mueller, by the German dance theater master Pina Bausch. For the Taiwanese works, I would like to recommend those created by the progenitors in our dance field. Teacher Liu Feng Shui's work, Cao Pi and Zhen Mi. Teacher Lin Huaimin's work, Legacy, and a DVD made by our government to promote outstanding dance troupes in Taiwan called Dancing Taiwan, which introduces dance works and interviews of some outstanding troupes in Taiwan. The above 6 works are collections available in the Performing Arts Library of the National Theatre and Concert Hall. Take Teacher Lin Huaimin's Legacy as an example. The work premiered in 1978. We can combine book reading, original DVD or footage from the internet, and also resources from the website of the dance company. For books, we can read the Cloudgate dance commentaries, or the book Taiwan, A Great Place Later, the breaking of diplomatic relations between ROC and the US, and the 20th anniversary of the premiere of Legacy. The book you can go purchasing or borrowing it from the library. They can help us understand the background information of the work. The Legacy DVD from the Cloudgate Dance Theatre is also a film you can refer to. When people see a piece of work, they would bring along their own subjective experience. That is to say, your past would affect your perspective of viewing and interpretation. So my advice for the students is that, generally speaking, I would hope that they can read and see more. What people like to read may be different. Just read more on what you like anyway, and see more performances as well to get more experiences. Then you will accumulate a certain amount of data. This database will help you when you see a performing artwork, or any work. Thus, various associations will easily be triggered. That's all very helpful for your analysis and appreciation in the future. The story of Mulan is familiar to everyone, but the author, Cai Po-chang, I think he's pretty ingenious. With a story that everyone is familiar with, he has come up with an innovative idea. In fact, there is abundant gender awareness in it. I think in addition to drama education, his work can also allow teachers to encourage discussions on gender education. There is a play in English called Trifles. The play was written by a female writer in the early 20th century. This is one of Susan Glaspell's plays. It is a very short play, and the language is also quite simple. So I think, for example, combining the play with English language teaching is pretty good too. That is to say, for example, English teachers can use this play to let students perform. So through reading, or even through performance, students can also learn about an English play. Then, another interesting thing about this play is that it's a play of the early 20th century. It brought in a budding feminist consciousness. Traditional opera, in the past few decades has evolved so much that those who have not paid attention to the field may not be able to imagine. That is to say, the traditional opera is moving toward refinement or striding on the literary route. At the same time, for example, Taiwanese opera may try to retain some of the popular and interesting elements while still working towards the direction of refinement. In addition, take Peking opera for example. Taiwan's Guoguang Opera Company has also made a lot of efforts. They try to get closer to the younger audience. So even Peking opera now is not what people had thought of before, being enshrined in a high-class altar, and was far away from common people. They have made quite a lot of changes. Their themes are also very contemporary. For example, Tang Meiyun Taiwanese Opera Company, there's a play called The Maze of Memories. It is about the problem between a mother-in-law and a daughter-in-law, and the issue of dementia among elders. It is performed in quite a realistic way. It is also beautifully done. The performance is worth seeing, and in fact the production also integrated technologies such as projections, the technology of projection, but at the same time it retains singing, reciting, acting, fighting, etc. The basic elements of the traditional opera. The play also speaks to the feelings of contemporary people. So I think these traditional operas are not what we used to think they were, belonging to the old folks, or very slow, or that kind of stereotypes. For traditional opera in general, I would suggest that students in their lives, sometimes on the street or in their communities, they might have the chance to encounter traditional opera performances. In this case, of course, I would recommend that you observe, for example, the temple, the surroundings, and the audience, and how they form a certain space. Students are encouraged to observe the space and experience. But when students look at these external environments, they should be aware that there are issues involved. Factors such as how much money is paid by the temple or the patrons would affect the quality of the performances. When the teachers take the students to see outdoor performances, maybe they can design some homework for the students. For example, ask them to write the scenario. What happened in the first scene? What happened in the second scene? A simple outline of the scenes. Because these outdoor performances are usually scene outline performances. They have a framework, but the lines in the play are mostly improvised by the actors on the spot. So their improvisation skills are very strong. I think when taking students to see the outdoor performances, teachers can remind them to pay attention to this feature. As it's guided by the teachers with some screenings, it can ensure that students have pleasant and positive experiences in watching the outdoor performances for the first time. So they might be more willing to continue to observe or pay attention to this kind of performance activity in the future. About self-study. How do you find resources? Similarly, I have 3 types of reference resources that I would like to share with you. The first one is that you should have a basic reading list. Second, we now have many online resources from relevant organizations that we can use. Then, there are the library's collections and electronic resources. What do you do when you get these resources? Of course, it is hoped that students can understand the people, the events, and the substance of the dance, and can enjoy the truth, the goodness, and the beauty of the dance. We hope to help students establish prior knowledge. Then, it can be used in the appreciation, creation, performance, and application of dance. Of course, we still need teachers' instruction and guidance in learning. Yet, if you have to study by yourself, you have to work harder to find resources and then improve yourself in stages. So these 3 reference resources for self-study we introduced earlier, and the 3 stages of appreciation, for example, are all provided, hoping students can make good use of them and study hard. I hope students can be dare to practice, through experimental innovations, analyze and reflect, and challenge themselves to become a better performing arts person.